Germany's plan to invade France in the World War involved bypassing the northern part of the Maginot Line and advancing deep into French territory through Belgium and the Netherlands. However, Hitler was a skilled strategist who would not implement a plan that everyone could easily predict. The Allied forces were expecting an attack based exactly on this plan and had organized their defenses accordingly. Later, the plan, which would be codenamed the Sedan Plan, was developed by General Manstein. According to this plan, armored units would pass through the Ardennes forest between southern Belgium and Luxembourg and attack towards Sedan, splitting the Allied forces in two. This was a very risky plan because the Ardennes forest was very unsuitable terrain. Furthermore, the Allies could have understood the Sedan Plan and quickly moved their forces there before the forest was crossed. However, Hitler came up with a brilliant idea. An army of 5 divisions would attack Belgium and the Netherlands, where the Allies expected the attack, while a 40-division army would follow the Sedan Plan and enter French territory through the Ardennes. This was a plan the Allies could not have predicted. On the morning of May 10, 1940, German forces adhered to the plan and crossed the Belgium and Netherlands border to attack. At the same time, the German Air Force began to weaken Dutch and Belgian defenses with intense attacks. By the second day of the operation, Belgian forces were forced to retreat. As expected, the initial response of the Allied forces was to advance north into Belgium and the Netherlands. For the first 2 days, German forces did not attack the Allied forces. According to the Sedan Plan, the Allies were allowed to advance freely and as quickly as possible. After the Allied army approached the German forces sufficiently, the counterattack and air operations began. Soon, German armored units captured the town and fortress of Sedan. At that time, the Allies were satisfied with the progress of the war. A large portion of the Allied army was held along the line from the southern end of the Belgium front to Sedan. However, the defensive line in the Ardennes, where the Germans attacked, was held by a division composed of older soldiers with almost no anti-tank or anti-aircraft weapons. As mentioned earlier, no one expected an attack from this area. The next morning, a turning point occurred in the French campaign. By then, the Netherlands had surrendered in the north. The German army's objective had been achieved. The Allied forces were split into 2. However, the Germans did not strictly follow the Sedan Plan and moved their southern units northward to destroy the Allied forces. Bologna and Padua fell one by one. The Allies found themselves caught between 2 fires and were driven toward Dunkirk. All of this occurred in an incredibly short period of 12 days. The British and French Allied forces were trapped at the port of Dunkirk on the English Channel coast of France. Their only hope was that the Belgian army would hold out until the Allied forces could be evacuated. However, the Belgian army could not hold out for long. On May 27, 1940, the defense line collapsed against German attacks, and the Belgian government had to request a ceasefire. Thus, another wing of the Allied forces had collapsed. At that moment, a great miracle occurred. Hitler ordered the German ground forces to stop. The reason was that the German Air Force Command convinced Hitler that Dunkirk could be destroyed only by air attacks. The very next day, approximately 900 ships and boats of various sizes set out from the coast of England toward Dunkirk. Their sole objective was to evacuate as many soldiers as possible. Due to the Germans' delay, around 345,000 Allied soldiers were rescued from Dunkirk with ships and boats. This event would later change the course of the war because the rescued soldiers were rearmed and sent against the Germans again. The second phase of the French campaign began on June 5, 1940, with the German attacks moving south from Maubeuge. However, the stiff French resistance north of Paris slightly hindered the German advance. The French army occasionally launched counterattacks with armored units but was largely unsuccessful. Despite all the French efforts, the forces they could deploy to the front were much fewer in number than the German forces. The Germans faced French resistance for 2 days. However, on June 7, 1940, the French defense collapsed. The Germans crossed the Seine River on June 9, 1940, without encountering serious resistance. As the French exhausted their final forces, their lines collapsed one after another. On June 14, 1940, the Germans entered Paris in just about a month. The French now realized they had reached the end of the war. Paris was evacuated by the French army without resistance to avoid damage. On June 16, the French Prime Minister resigned. Marshal Pétain, who formed the new cabinet, sent a request for an agreement to Hitler on the same day, and the France-Germany war officially ended with the France Agreement signed on June 22. According to the surrender terms, northern France and the lands forming the coast of the English Channel would be left to Germany, while the remaining southern territories would not be occupied. This constituted about 60% of France's territory. Adolf Hitler realized that the invasion of England would not be as easy as France. Initially trying a peaceful approach, Hitler offered Prime Minister Churchill a peace agreement. However, London rejected this offer unconditionally. Such a peace would mean acknowledging Germany's dominance over the continent. It would also allow Germany to shift all its forces to the Eastern Front and expand its borders. After this rejection, Hitler initiated the Battle of Britain to force the United Kingdom to the peace table or, if necessary, to invade it. Hitler relied on the Luftwaffe to destroy or paralyze the British Air Force. On August 8, 1940, German Commander Göring ordered the Air Force to begin the assault. German Air Force units taking off from Germany and France encountered unexpected resistance when they entered London airspace. The British had possibly made a very important invention that could change the course of the war: radar. Thanks to this new invention, the British could detect the locations and directions of German planes approaching the United Kingdom from 5 kilometers away and respond accordingly. British planes counterattacked, and Berlin was bombed for the first time since the beginning of the war. For Hitler, this created a situation that required careful consideration. But this was only the beginning. Germany's rapid conquests, Dunkirk's miraculous evacuation, and the first British counterattacks were just the opening moves. What happens next will change the course of the war entirely. Stay tuned, because the story is far from over.